Don't worry, there is nothing wrong with your screen. The video isn't malfunctioning. This is what things look like through my eyes. I have MS and optic neuritis. So I do have a full video about my MS diagnosis and experience and everything that happened, which I will link down below. I do recommend watching that first if you are brand new to my channel here, because it does give a lot of context as to what I went through. While unfortunately MS is a very common disease now, the attack that I suffered and the severity of my condition was very uncommon. And this video specifically, I wanted to talk about my optic neuritis and my vision loss, because that has also been a huge part of why my condition and my case of MS has been so uncommon and so severe. So optic neuritis is a condition that is very commonly associated with MS, not always, but pretty often. Optic neuritis is basically inflammation of the optic nerve. So there's a little nerve that connects your eyeball to your brain and sends all the messages that your eyeball is gathering to your brain so that your brain can make sense of it. With optic neuritis, that nerve becomes damaged and inflamed. So the messages that your eyeballs are gathering have trouble making their way properly to the brain. Signals get crossed, things don't get interpreted properly, and it can result in vision loss and vision impairment, often like blurred vision, color loss, things like that. Typically with optic neuritis, it only affects one eye at a time. However, in my case, it affected both eyes at the same time. My doctors explained to me how uncommon that is, and that's part of why they were so puzzled and stumped with my condition initially. They really weren't sure what they were dealing with, what type of MS they were dealing with, because they hadn't really encountered many cases like mine before. Also, usually with optic neuritis, it has a relatively sudden onset. So a lot of people will wake up one morning with their vision blurred or having difficulty seeing out of one eye. In my case, it was a little bit more gradual, still relatively quickly, but it happened over the course of a couple days. Things gradually started to get more blurry and more dark every day. So between December 25th to January 2nd, things started to get more blurry every day, and it was almost like someone had turned on a dimmer switch. Things started to just get more dark. I started having trouble seeing the TV. I started having trouble making out like the details, and things just kind of seemed to get more dim and like desaturated. Like it really was like someone had turned on a dimmer switch and they were like turning down the lights and turning down the saturation. Over the few days after that, up until January 2nd, things started to progress pretty quickly. By January 2nd, I was almost completely blind. So I really couldn't make out any shapes, any detail. I could kind of see shadows. I couldn't see my family in front of me. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. I could kind of see changes in light, like if I'd gone from outside to inside, I could kind of tell the difference in light, but that was pretty much it. So while in the hospital, I had some tests done to figure out what was going on with my eyes, because it was very concerning. They really hadn't come across someone who had had such severe vision loss in both eyes at the same time, plus the paralysis, plus the like fatigue, barely being conscious. It was all just a whole thing, and they really weren't sure what they were dealing with. So over my time in the hospitals and getting physiotherapy and occupational therapy to basically relearn how to do everything for myself again, like tying my shoes, cutting with a knife and fork, everything, they described to me optic neuritis with an analogy that honestly makes a lot more sense. So optic neuritis and my condition is like a post office that's getting thousands of letters a day, but half the postal workers are on strike. So those letters cannot get to where they need to go. That's kind of like optic neuritis. Structurally, my eyeball is completely fine. My retina, my cornea, iris, everything is completely fine. The problem is that stupid little nerve that connects your eyeball to your brain. So your eyeball gathers information of what you're seeing and sends those messages to your brain. But that little nerve that sends those messages to your brain is blocking some of those messages from getting through. So I can see people and I can see objects and stuff like that, but I cannot see anything clearly. So it's kind of like there is a foggy filter over my eyes at all time. So the visual acuity, which is like that clear vision, the sharpness, the detail, I don't have that, and that's impaired. So for example, I can see my hand in front of me, but I can't see like the detail of my hand. If I had like a little scratch or like a little dot, I probably wouldn't be able to see it. Doing my makeup, I can see enough to see where I'm applying the makeup, but I can't see how it looks. So luckily, I think a lot of it is like muscle memory, because I did it for a career for years. I can put my makeup on and then I have to get someone like my mom or my boyfriend to check that I've blended okay. I could see if I got like a big black spot from mascara, but for example, I can't see my pores. I can't see the texture and tone of my skin, nothing like that. I can see where I'm applying blush, but I can't see what it looks like. I can't see what the shade looks like. So the legal requirement for driving and vision is 20/50. So at this point, of course, obviously I cannot drive. For example, I can see that there's a car in front of me, but unless I am close and I really focus, I can't read the license plate of the car in front of me. My color vision is also affected. I can see color, but I can't see it very well. So distinguishing between gray and white, for example, or like a light brown versus a light gray, things like that are much more difficult for me. So I really rely on the increased contrast of devices and colors. Larger font I can read. I'm starting to be able to read regular size font with some difficulty and some time, but it's definitely a bigger challenge. So for example, if I am holding a book, I can probably read the title and read what it says on the covers, but opening up and reading it inside, it takes a lot of time and effort for me to make out each word. So I met with a specialist, a neuro-ophthalmologist who specializes in like eye issues and ophthalmology in relation to neurology, so nerves, the brain, everything. And from what he could see, there definitely was some inflammation and damage to my optic nerves. But that was really only half the story of what was causing my vision issues. So typically with optic neuritis, it is the damage or inflammation to those nerves. But in my case, that was only half of it. I also had lesions or like little scars or plaques, which is the case with multiple sclerosis. And those lesions happen to be on both sides of my brain on the occipital lobe. So the occipital lobe is the part of your brain that controls your vision, is like your optic center. So that was also adding to the vision issues that I was having. So my doctor said like, wow, you must be pretty special. You got hit with a double whammy. And I was like, yeah, lucky me, I'm so special. So while they were trying to diagnose exactly what was wrong with me, they did test me for some other things, such as a condition called NMO or neuromyelitis optica, which is a bit more commonly associated with the bilateral vision loss. So the vision loss affecting both eyes. They ruled that out after the test showed I did not have the antibodies needed for that condition, and it was most likely a very, very severe form of MS. They started me on treatments that included a very high dose of corticosteroids, a plasma exchange treatment, as well as later some disease-modifying treatments through an infusion. Over the next couple of months, after I started getting the treatment, my vision did start to improve. Very, very slowly. So it improved little bits, like snail speed slow, little bits at a time. It wasn't like every day my vision just got more clear and more clear. It was more like I started to be able to notice things that I couldn't see before. So I started to be able to see that there were paper flower decorations on the wall. My vision's improved a little bit. I can see my dad, like the shape of my dad, and I can see his phone a little bit. I can see my mom has some nice paper flowers on the walls. I can see those. Whereas at first I could not tell those were there. I had no idea what my surroundings were like. I could not tell anything about my hospital room. I started to be able to see the shape and shadow of my parents or my boyfriend in the room with me. I started to slowly be able to make out the letters of the words above the elevator in the hospital, things like that. Now, unfortunately, because my condition was so severe in the beginning, I couldn't do anything for myself. With the paralysis and motor skills issues, plus the vision loss, I couldn't feed myself, I couldn't brush my teeth, I couldn't do anything. So I needed help from nurses and my family with absolutely everything. I had to be fed for every meal, and I was 23, turning 24, so you can imagine how devastating that is for anyone at any age, but let alone someone kind of like in the prime of their young adulthood, just starting their life. In March, I was discharged from the regular hospital to go to a rehabilitation hospital to work on improving my motor skills, my coordination, and getting me walking again. I was there for just under 2 months, and my vision did continue to improve, like I said, very slowly but steadily. I started to be able to do more things for myself. Because the improvement was so slow, day by day, I really didn't notice it. And as much as I wished that I would wake up one day and my vision would just be back, I dreamt about that like every night, that I would just open my eyes and my vision would be back. And then I would wake up for real and my vision was still blurred, and I was like, oh man. So in April, before I left the rehabilitation hospital, my vision tested at a 20/225, which is considered legally blind. So in order to meet the legally blind criteria, your vision with corrective lenses like contacts or glasses is a 20/200 or worse. So basically, the higher the number, farther away from 20/20, the worse your vision is. I just went back to the doctors to get my eyes tested a couple of weeks ago, and it is now a 20/80. So it has improved significantly. Unfortunately, at this point, it is not fully back. I'm still considered visually impaired or low vision, but I'm no longer considered legally blind. So I've started to be able to do basic things again. You know, everything is a bit of an adjustment, but I can cook for myself again. I can start to do the things that I used to do. Not to the same, extent or ease, but I'm starting to be able to with a bit of an adjustment and just going more slowly. Looking back over the year prior to this whole experience, there were some sort of warning signs or symptoms that now I realize were likely kind of leading up to this. I would very frequently have sort of blurred vision in one eye, or I would feel like there was something on my contact lens, or just like my vision wasn't very sharp. I usually figured that my contact lens was dirty. Maybe I got makeup on it or something, so I would like go take it out and rinse it, and then it would usually go away. Sometimes I would see like a spot on my contact lens, and no matter how much I rinsed it, it wouldn't seem to go away. I really didn't think much of it. I was like, well, I wear a lot of makeup, so I probably got something on it. While in Disneyland, just before I was hospitalized, I did notice that my vision was not very sharp. I had just gotten a new prescription, so I thought maybe my contacts were just defective. Things didn't seem as sharp as they should be for someone who just got a new prescription. Usually, if you are a contacts or glasses wearer, when you get a new prescription, it's like seeing everything in HD for the first time. I thought it was weird, but I figured, okay, this batch of contacts must just be like defective or something. I didn't really think too much about it. It wasn't enough to really make me concerned. It was just very, very subtle. Before this all happened, I worked as a makeup artist and a blogger, and that was my life. I am such a huge makeup lover and makeup addict. I literally have a studio in my room that's like my beauty room and filming setup. I would do reviews, tutorials, everything. It honestly was my life. The doctors cannot tell me if my vision will return or not. No one can tell that. It's really just a matter of time. Typically, they like to give about a year to determine how much vision you might recover. I'm at about the 9-month mark now, and it's still not back. While it has improved a lot, and I'm very grateful for that, I can't drive, I can't do makeup, I can't do blogging like I used to, or photography and videography like I used to, but I'm not done recovering yet. And as much as the thought of never being able to do the things that I used to do or getting my career back, as much as that devastates me, I'm choosing to focus and force myself to be optimistic every day. Practicing methods of mindfulness and optimism. Every day I tell myself, my optic nerves are healing, the inflammation is going down, and I'm getting my vision back. And while I don't always believe that, and I definitely struggle with it, it is devastating and heartbreaking. I'm choosing to continue to tell myself every single day, I'm not done recovering yet. And considering that in January I was paralyzed and fully blind and in the hospital, and now I'm home and I have recovered so much. It's incredible, and I need to focus on that hope. Part of why I really wanted to make this video, especially in relation to the vision loss in both eyes and MS, is because it's so uncommon. I searched every single day in the hospital, hoping to find something on the internet or someone on YouTube talking about vision loss in both eyes at the same time, and I didn't find that. I couldn't find anyone sharing their story, and that to me was so terrifying and so isolating to think, why did this happen to me? Why was my case so bad? Like, optic neuritis is something that affects so many people across the world. Especially in the MS community, it is unfortunately very common. And even if you have not experienced it in both eyes at the same time, you know how debilitating and frustrating and terrifying and awful it is to lose your vision. So for example, at the beginning of December 2018, I was in Disneyland with my best friend. Going on roller coasters, running around the park, shopping, taking photos and videos. And then a couple weeks later, I was blind. And now to sit here in my studio surrounded by so much makeup and products that I love so much, but I can't use. Reality definitely can slap you in the face and your life can change so quickly. So my intention for making this video was to share my story, just in case anyone else is going through something similar with optic neuritis, any condition, especially conditions that affect the nerves and the brain. Every case is so different. MS is often referred to as the snowflake disease because everyone is a little bit different. There's no one case that's exactly the same as another. But that being said, there are so many things that we share amongst each other. While everyone's situation and story is unique, there are similarities that I think we can find comfort in sharing our story and connecting with other people. It has definitely been difficult and a challenge and an adjustment, trying to adjust to being visually impaired. You have to kind of relearn how to do things in a way that makes it easier for you. Things like cooking, organizing your pantry, putting labels on things that make things a bit easier for you to see. Adjusting your phone, increasing the font size and the contrast, everything like that. I've learned a lot over the last year being blind and visually impaired. I would like to make a whole video about tips that I use and things that have made daily life a lot easier for me, as well as games. There are a whole bunch of games designed for the visually impaired and the blind, which I had no idea. I mean, prior to this, I really wasn't exposed much to people with vision issues. It wasn't something I was really aware of. I definitely have a much greater appreciation for it now. And there's a lot of tools and a lot of resources out there to us. And things like being able to play a game on your phone. Okay, you may not be able to do it the same way as someone with full vision might, but that doesn't mean that there's nothing for you. I actually am planning to do a full video reviewing a bunch of these games. I downloaded about 12 or 15 games for the visually impaired or blind on my phone, and I'd like to kind of play them all, review them, go through each of them so that you don't have to kind of weed out the good from the bad, which ones I recommend, things like that, as well as other tools and adjustments that I have made to make my life a little bit more easy. Probably the most important thing that I have learned throughout this whole experience, especially with the vision loss, is how important it is to understand that it's okay to ask for help and it's okay to need help. I am very much the type of person that hates asking for help. I would much rather try and do something myself, but things like this, I need help. For example, I can't drive myself to the doctor's office. I can't see enough to really use public transportation or Uber or things like that. So I do have to rely quite a lot on my family, my boyfriend, for help. Everyone's different. Everyone's vision loss is different. Everyone's story is different. But I think there's something that we can all learn from the challenges that we go through. I really wanted to make this video to share my experience with optic neuritis and vision loss and also my recovery. I do have a lot more videos that I am planning to make. So if you are interested in, say, MS or vision loss, optic neuritis, as well as healthy lifestyle and eating to improve your autoinflammatory condition or your autoimmune condition, because that is something that I have implemented that has been a huge, huge help to me over the last few months since being home. I now follow a very clean, nutrient-dense, anti-inflammatory diet, and that has helped significantly with my symptoms. So if you are interested in anything like that, definitely subscribe and join me on this journey. If you or anyone that you know struggles with optic neuritis or vision loss, whether it's a similar story, if it's in one eye, anything like that, definitely leave me a comment. I would really love to know what your story is, what kind of tips or resources you have that help you make life a little bit more easier and enjoyable day to day. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!